Oh. Hello everyone, just a couple of minutes. It's quite a slow PC here. Well. Well, okay, let's start this way. Hello everybody. It seems that we lost roughly half of the people this week. Yeah. I suppose it's not a tendency because I'm not sure about half of semester just is passing now. Okay, so today's lecture, it's lecture number 3, and I will speak about the programming tools. Actually, it's a heart of programming. If variables, data manipulation, it's kind of basic grounds for any programming and for any program. Then programming tools, which are loops, cycles, conditions, it's actually a heart of functional programming. It's probably the most important tools which you need to know. For some of you who are experienced in some programming languages, I mean this part probably should be easy, for other students not, but anyway we need to go through all this table. First of all, it's loop, like a for operator, when you need to make some specific number of operation, which you know how many, for example, make 1,000 of iteration of some equation or procedure, while it says also loop when you don't know how many operations you need. You know just a criterion, for example, up to end of file, up to some values. Will have some specific value and so on. We'll see. And here's the important thing that there is also some specific additional operators to each of these constructions. For example, for while, first of all, it's a break operator, and to be honest, for as well, it's an operator which can break your loop. or like continue, allow you to go to the next step of your program. And in MATLAB, you need to finish all the loops or operators like this with the what and. Conditional operator if and also supplementary else if and else, and operator switch, which sometimes is very useful. It's when you know that your problem have a number of specific cases, you can just ask computer about all these cases and make just a table for your problem. It's kind of art which operator to choose, which tools you need to choose at each part of your program or for this specific procedure. They also have a bit different speed or rate of execution, so you need to choose the most relevant. The most important and basic operator is actually for, or it's a cycle or loop. You already know what means 1, 2, 3. It means that it's kind of iteration. So here you can see that you can have 1 4 included into another one, and in this case this is a matrix A or array. Well, it will be. So, who knows what will be the very first value for, third value for this matrix A, what it will be. And for example, the first element will be A11. What will be the third? Who knows? And sorry? No, A what? What is index I and what is index J for the third iterations, for the third steps, on the third step? Well, it will be A13, actually. Because first of all, the internal for will work. So at the very initial step, it gives. This construction gives for your matrix value 1 for I and 1 for J. Then it will work first with the internal for. So the second step of iteration will be I equal to 1, the same as on the previous step, but J equal to 2. So it will be element A12. At the third, it will be A13, and on the fourth next iteration, I became equal to 2, and J again will be equal to 1. So it will be A2 to 1. Is it clear? So, okay. What cycle third do? Actually, it just put the numbers which you can see in your rows from 1 to 3 in this case into instead of letter G in your equations. The first, the upper for cycle will assign some number for I. For example, I equal to 1. The second for assign the first number for J, like J equal to 1 as well, at the very first step. So it will be A11. what you can see here, it's 1 plus 1, it will be equal to 2. Then the external operator will not work because at the second step will work only the inside operator, I mean J, like J++. J increase the number to 2, but I remains equal to 1, and it will be A 1, 2. That means 1 plus 2 equal to 3. You can see it here, and so on. You will need to think about it and realize how it works, but it's very important. Yeah? What do you mean, what is 1, 2? Well, you mean 2 dots, it means that it starts with 1, then it takes the whole row 1. No? You mean here? I don't want to speak now a lot about matrices because our next lecture will be about matrices. Now my aim is very simple, it's just to show these constructions that from one side for iterate from first value like 1 here, it can be different value. You can iterate, for example, from 5 to 1000 or something like that. And you can iterate not only with step 1, but with step, for example, 2 or larger. It's how it works, and you can use also cycle loops included one into others. The second, it's quite complicated example, but I specially choose it because in this lesson I want to show you a couple of more realistic example of programming. It's no worries that you cannot understand everything here, but the idea here that you can open actually your file, some magic.m. You want to read it, and while phi of it's a function which reads, if I remember it correctly, while it meets end of file, so it reads all the file and then stop. This is the idea for this, and you can also see that that operator if is included inside the cycle while, and it decided is it empty or copy the string. And you can see two end. First end inside it's the end for if, and the second end outside is the end for cycle while. So you don't know in this case how long is your file, but you just read this file up to its end. Okay, this is the idea for cycle while. This is a simple example for operator or loop switch. You just write switch some variable which have some specific number, and you describe different cases. For example, in first case, if this variable equal 1, 2, or 3, oh no, in this case it's if it's a vector like 1, 2, 3, you display the word first. On the second case, if it's equal 4, 5, 6, like vector, you display the word second. And otherwise, one more operator, you display something like error. This just the idea. Instead of display, you can use any function. For example, if it your variable have some specific value, you can launch some procedure. For example, calculate the length or make some calculations. For example, change this variable or something like that. But anyway, so switch is a good choice when you know specifically which cases you have in your problem. And if you have just a few cases which is very different one from other. Well, it's just a reminder from the previous lecture that because it's important now in your operator if you actually must to use some logical operators, and you have a lot of them. For example, greater than, less than, greater or equal, lesser than or equal, and not equal. And also you can combine these things with and or not operator, like you can see on the right side. For example, for n, in this case, your x must be lesser than 3, and at the same time y must be bigger than 0. That is not true for in this example. Okay, and you can use this operator like if. It's just a very simple example. Well, here again, inside this cycle 4, as it usually happens, you can see that here the cycle 4 from 1 to 10, and if I is equal to 5, please note that equal, when you compare it with something, it's not one sign equal, but two signs. If I equal to 5, then break. It means then you need to finish the execution of this cycle 4 and end. What you have as a result is some row of column of I from 1 to 5. Do you see that your operator 4 should have actually 10 values, not 5? Yeah, do you see it from 1 to 10? But you have output only with 5 numbers. It happens because you can have if operator with break. So when I becomes equal to 5, operator breaks, just break your cycles and and finished actually. No, in this case it finished your program, and you obtain only 5 values instead of 10. So it's works like this. Well, okay, I first show you. It's I took it from the next tutorial actually, but here is the idea of flow charts. It's a very good tools for you to visualize, like mind charts or something like that, mind map. I mean, to visualize for yourself or to make it clear what is your problem or what is your program, sorry, and how it is executing. Here. There is a common rule to draw such diagrams. Oval shape used for start and stop. So it means at the beginning of your program and at the end. Rectangular shape used for some generic processing steps. Diamond shape used for conditions, decision step like if. and parallelogram shape used for program output when you want to display or input something. So you can see it here that start at the end it's oval, some diamond or like this. Diamond shape is for choosing yes or no for decision-making process. Usual operations in the rectangular boxes, and parallelogram actually here is some display or input operations. So it's a really good idea when you design your program, when you design your code, actually to draw such diagrams. I know that even some, for example, journals, or when you want to publish it, or describe your code, your problem, you often need to draw something like this to explain them to other people. So, well, probably you will try it. Well, one more practical example here. Okay, it's a general code which I will describe in more details. It's the example of very famous bubble sort. It's a kind of sorting method for some arrays. If you, for example, if you have x equal to Randy, it actually creates your it creates, well, if I interpreted correctly, 100 values from 1 probably to 1,000 with the step 1. So in this case, you have a big, quite large vector of x. And as at random values, it can be different. You can obtain very different values on different places of your vector. And if you want to sort it, if you want to arrange them from, for example, from bigger one to smallest, you need to somehow sort your vector values. It's a very common problem in programming. You will often need to sort something. I will speak that there is a standard function, but it's another method which also work good. So one more interesting thing here which you can use in your program, it's actually the execution time of your program. You can write just a tick at the beginning of your code or somewhere inside your code. Then you write your code, for example, the algorithm for sorting. And then you just write time elapsed equal to talk. And finally, as the output, you will obtain the time, I guess in milliseconds, which show you how fast, how long it takes for your computer to execute this code. Sometimes it's very helpful, especially when you compare different codes between each other, or when you or when you need to estimate how for example, the increasing of your arrays affects the execution time. A bit more about bubble sort and how it works. Well, first of all, function numeral just accounts the size of your array. So if you have a vector of x, num here, it's just the length of your vector, the number of elements. Then I used two loops. First for j, you can see from 0 to num -1. And the second for I. from 1 to, it's a bit tricky, num minus j minus 1. It means it means that when you can think about it, how it works. It's a bit tricky, and it aims to make a procedure like a bubble when it goes up. Then when you find some elements and you compare it with the number of elements before it, and if it's bigger than this, you just replace the elements. This is, oh well, sorry. Here I again just want to pay attention for the two loops, which one inside other. Cycle 4 from J to something, and cycle 1, other cycle 4 from I to something else, which is inside. And this is the heart of the algorithm, is this conditional construction I, that if xi element of the vector greater than I plus 1 element of this vector, then you temporarily save the value of this vector in variable temp, then you replaces, I mean, you assign for xi the value of xi plus 1 and return the value temp to the element xi plus 1. This procedure, if you will thinking about it, just do nothing more than replace two elements, values of two elements from their side. Well, well, I probably need to come to the first line again. So this left-hand side is the bubble sort methods, which I tried to explain you, and it have elapsed time 139 milliseconds. But the standard MATLAB algorithm sort X actually outputs the same results during the time 65 milliseconds. So it works twice faster. Their sorting works twice faster than my algorithm. Actually, it's because they use more efficient algorithm for array sorting, and that's probably one of the main advantages of MATLAB. That one of the most efficient algorithms are already realized here. So when you use some simple function, for example, like sort or any others, you actually obtain one of the most efficient algorithm for this procedure. But as a disadvantage to this, you often can't manage the process, for example, of this sorting, like here. Okay, is it clear, at least in very general things? But I really suggest you to find somewhere in the internet bubble sort algorithm and try to understand how it works, and maybe realize it by yourself, because it is really helpful. Well, the next one, actually a bit more, much more complicated example, which I downloaded from, you can see references website on the MathWorks forum. But by this example, I want to show a couple of things actually. That for many of your even more complicated problems, for example, like here, it's a problem of ballistic impact. Actually, not for impact, but for ballistics. When you throw, for example, some ball or stone, I don't know, in there, and you want to estimate how the distance how the distance where it fall depends on the angle with which you throw this this ball. So the question is, do you need it throw horizontal, vertical, or at some angles like 45 degrees? It's very practical actually problem, and but at the same time, you can see that it's very standard problem. And if you want to solve some standard problem, it's a good idea usually to look the same problem in some forums. No, actually just to Google this problem in the internet. For MATLAB, for example, write the ballistics problem in MATLAB and find some already made code. And if you have this code, you can actually solve more complicated problem. For example, with ballistics impact, or I don't know, to make some special atmosphere here. So you not need usually to lost your time to write these simple codes, but you can concentrate on the decision of specific problem and just download some reliable code from the internet. The second thing which I want to show you here is that in this code you can see a lot of comments. And it's really important because as we see this code first time, we should somehow understand this code, how it works. What means M, for example, 0.8? From here you can see that it's not only that it's mass, as we can guess, but also there's this mass in kilograms. And the system of units here is seconds, meters, well, actually C. So it's really important to write all the comments. It's a good practice also to clear everything before the execution of your problem. Well, and you can see here some procedure. This is the shot on it. Central part of your code. Actually, you try to find your velocity. It's here is just a projection of this velocity, but here is the interesting part because ODE it's 45. It's one of the version of algorithm to solve differential equation. So you can solve in MATLAB differential equation when you will need it as simple as this, just with this function. But here it's also we will learn it maybe also next time. You use some function MotoBallistica. It's a separate M file, which is a function which calculates the updated variable from physical law. And finally, you can see here that the outer plot the data. Subplot means that you divide your area, your screen, on two by two cells and use from 1 to 3 of them. Well, and this is the function MotoBallistica, which is a bit tricky, and you can see even, I guess it's Italian, right? I mean comments. Or Spanish, who knows? Okay, anyway, I just want to show that in some real examples you can meet everything, but even here you can, because of the comments for all the coefficients, you can see the physical law here. For example, you can understand that this is the force, this is the density of your air, this is the velocity in x direction. I can't remember. This is a gravitation force, which is a mass times acceleration, and so on. So it's solve your problem and gives you the increasing of different data. And finally, you obtain, just when you launch this problem, you obtain the graphics like this. It's for different initial angles of throwing. You see the distance, range of distances where your ball fell. So you can estimate roughly from here that the maximum, surprisingly, it's well, it's not clear from here. It's I guess it should be 60 degrees. Green one. Yeah, see, you can see it also here. For example, yes, that's the max H increasing monotonically with the increase of alpha angle. So it's just an example how you can use your program is in real application. When you know all your, when you can define your variables. When you can write some cycles like 4, included one into each other, when you will know how to write the functions, you actually already can solve a very complex problem, especially if you will use some free models from the reliable sources in internet. Well, and now at the end, a few words about the coursework number 1. I want to make some explanations to avoid many questions and so on. Well, first of all, this is the task itself, and I can highlight here the few things. First of all of them are important, and I also show you this as a kind of explanation to avoid the similar situations which sometimes we had at with this coursework, to avoid them in the future. Well, if you read carefully this text, you see that first of all you should use function input to write something from the keyboard. For some of you who write something like a function, it is also okay if the user can write his input from the keyboard. Then you actually must use strings to display the result. Not only the displays the value, but use actually strings with explanation of these results. I'll show you. Then you need to check yourself, because some courseworks were obviously fail at this text while you anyway said that it works. So the idea for these three equations that you need to calculate the answers by hand or by other methods, and then launch your code and compare results obtained from your code with the true values which you obtain from, well, some other reliable code or calculated by hand. And it's important that your program can give the complex numbers, not only the real ones. We had some problem with this because some of you who use conditional things like if sometimes cut the complex roots from your output, and it is a problem. It is a problem because you obviously cannot obtain the same equation, the same roots, I mean the true roots of this equation. And to final thing, yeah, it should be comparing, and you shouldn't use automatic function like roots. So this is actually solution. Well, in perfect case, how it, or in good case, how it should looks like. First of all, well, it's not a mandatory, but well, some description of the author and aims of this code. Then it's not necessary, but usually it's a good idea to clear all your variables which you used before, because you can have the same variables with different values. Then you must actually use the function like input, and it's good if you use them with some explanation like coefficient of x to the power of 2 and so on. Then you should calculate your roots by the usual rule of mathematics, how to solve quadratic equation. Just use a discriminant and plus minus and divided by 2a. And the final thing, which is important, you should display your results and to write here both rules, like the roots are and some roots. It's important that you use as in the task use some strings for this aim as well. Short mention how it will work. As you could see here, you will earn the remaining 6 marks only if you can validate the program. So to prove that it works as required. So if you pass your test and your program is working as required, I mean with all the conditions above, then you obtain this additional 6 points for your test. Okay? If not, then you obtain the 4 points for the sending your coursework, and not obtain this 6 points for the test. It actually how it works. So test, it's not something well, actually additional, but it's in the bounds with the true-false coursework decision. I suppose as different people actually assess your testing, we do it this way. Then we will probably need to arrange so any comments and complaints we will be sort out via the discussion board, where you will need to write probably your student number or name or something like that, write your complaints, and the GTA's teaching assistant who check your work, he will answering you and discuss your solution. Okay? Is it okay? Fine. Fine. And Well, and probably the very last thing from this lecture part, at least, I need to say sorry about the discussion board this week, but it happens I mean, because we collect a number for unanswering questions, so we sort it out for the next week. But the problem, unfortunately, remains the same. Some of you, I mean tens of you, write me email, not only asking some problems, I mean some sufficient problem with their, I don't know, life or workability, but also answering the question related to them. To the coursework and so on. You can easily count, just multiply 400 of students times 5 minutes to answer each of you, so that I need more than probably a week or full working time to answer all questions. I will answer via email only the most essential things, like you have some, I don't know, illness, you have some specific problem not related with the coursework or with the tasks or even with lecture. Anything else you need to write via discussion board, and we sort out the fast answering with teaching assistant there, and I also will answer in here as quickly as I can. Okay? Is it works for you? Okay, perfect. Well, one more minute, okay? Just a couple of words more. We have a couple of minutes. I want to show this document. Oh, if it will work. Yeah, just to show you again the assessment file, all of you can download it from the course page. And you can see here again some how we are assessing actually your coursework and how many scores you can obtain. Please reread it carefully, okay? There are some important information here, but the most important thing, as you have a half of the assessment in your test at the end of the course, the first things you will need to understand how to solve these problems, like in coursework, like in this coursework. It's the most important thing. Some specific point, like do you have 6 points for the first coursework, is not so important. Yeah, and the very last thing, we almost finished with assessing of the first coursework and start assessing your second coursework. We will try to sort it out who sent me your program over deadline. I'm not sure what we will do, but we decided. And the next this week you will obtain probably the hardest coursework in this course. Okay, you will have a couple of weeks to complete it, and yeah, be prepared. Okay, thank you all for coming, and take care.